Hey, it's Leanne here today, and I wanted to talk today about the concept of treating yourself like a victim and how to know if you are doing that and how to get out of it if you are. So I mentioned a lot about the concept. I had this struggle growing up because from a young age there was a lot of attention put on my weight. From the time I was 7, I had this feeling like my body was different, right? But I also had 3 older brothers that were not very nice to me, right? And so a lot of times people ask me like, oh, how was it growing up with 3 brothers? That must have been really rough. And my knee-jerk answer, or my kind of default answer, is, oh, I mean, it really was, but nowadays they're amazing and we're great friends and all that, right? And it's true. But I had to kind of evolve myself past some of the programming that I downloaded as truth growing up here. So things like, I grew up thinking that I was rejected because my brothers didn't want to hang out with a girl, which, I mean, who can blame them, right? But I grew up also thinking that I believed people's words at face, or I took people's words at face value. So when my brothers would call me ugly or stupid or would literally call me a whore or something like that, I know it's crazy when you're a little kid, but they were just kids not knowing what those words really meant, right? I grew up believing those things. And so when I got into adulthood and I started on my personal growth journey, it got to the point where when I created this awareness of all the things that I had downloaded as truth that weren't true, it for if you're not careful, it can turn into one of those, oh my gosh, this happened to me. Like, what? Poor me, woe is me, right? And we can have these victim stories. So the first victim story that I can really identify, and how I'll share with you the distinction between owning your story and playing into the victim role, is that whole thing about my dad taking me to Weight Watchers. For years, I thought he was such a jerk. I thought he was a dick. How could he do that to me? How could he bring his young daughter there, right? And then it was on a workshop one weekend in Tampa that I had this awareness that, wow, he was just doing the best he knew how to do. He was just trying to protect me from struggling the way that he struggled with his weight, or trying to not treat me the way his mother treated him. And so the only thing that differentiated my victim story versus me actually accepting it and owning it was compassion. And what I mean by compassion is looking at the intention of it. Like, what was he having compassion for him? You know, it was a challenging thing. He saw his baby girl taking over some of the habits that he was so afraid of me actually getting, and he saw from a young age I started to possess those habits, and he wanted to put a stop to it. And the only way he knew how was to take me to Weight Watchers, and it was out of love. And I remember I called him from this workshop on one of our breaks, and I called him. I said, Dad, I'm so sorry. Like, I've been mad at you. I've called you, and I told him straight up, I'm like, I thought you were an asshole. I thought you were like the worst dad ever. Like, how could you do that to me? And I told him, I was like, I now see it was out of love. You were trying to protect me from whatever you were trying to protect me from. It was with good intentions, right? And he was like, yes. And he even said, he's like, if I could do that over again, I would not have done that, right? But he was like, yes, that's what the intentions were. And so something switched within me. I went from just accepting what happened and blaming him and being this victim throughout my life about it. And I went to not just owning what he did and looking at it in a different light, but owning who I was, who I had and hadn't been ever since then. Because the truth is, this happened when I was 7. Okay? At this point at the workshop, I was probably like 28 or 29. Now I'm 31. Who am I if I were to continue to blame my daddy issues, right, for who I'm not being today at the age of 31? Who am I to blame my brothers for who I'm not being? Who am I to blame anybody who contributed to some of the crazy fairy tales or stories I had about myself, the ones that I brought with me into adulthood, that I told myself I wasn't beautiful, that I was the opposite of all this stuff, that I wasn't brilliant, I wasn't smart, I wasn't talented, I wasn't gifted. All those things that I try to embrace now and I help other women embrace, I not only hid from them, but I called myself the worst opposite that you can think of in the book, right? So who would I be today if I just let my past tell the story for me, and then let them take responsibility and ownership of who I am and who I'm not today, decades later? And when I say it like that, I'm sure you're like, okay, that puts things in perspective, right? Because when you don't, as Brene Brown says, step into your story and own your story, you not only leave your life open to be written by others, but you never take ownership of who you have and haven't been up until now from whatever point hurt you or caused you pain or caused you to change your view of yourself. That's a big time gap. You know, for me, I'm talking from age 7 to age 28, right? Who takes ownership and blame of that? I can't keep blaming my dad forever. I can't keep blaming my brothers forever, right? And so that was a wake-up call for me of like, whoa, Leanne, I get it. You had some adversity growing up, but not the kind of adversity, like, in the scheme of things, it was not awful adversity, right? There's so much worse that could happen, right? But at the end of the day, sure, that happened, but it's not happening anymore. And it doesn't have to be true of you anymore. You don't have to walk around with that story anymore. And I think that is the big switch that takes place with the women I work with. They take ownership and responsibility of themselves and of their lives despite their past. So going back and reconciling your past doesn't have to be this big, long, drawn-out thing. It can simply be, you know what, that happened, and it sucked, or it pissed me off, or it made me sad, or it made me change my opinion of myself, or whatever. But it's not how it is anymore. You know, we carry around these past stories with us that don't serve us, and not only do we not know we're carrying them around, we're subconsciously blaming other people and carrying around a lot of anger and a lot of hurt, and it impacts our relationships with others and our relationships with ourselves. So if you're watching this and you commiserate with this, look at your life and say, where am I still holding on to my past baggage and feeling like a victim around it? And I think you'll find that it feels a lot better to just go back and have compassion for whoever it is that you're mad at, or go back and have compassion for yourself if you're mad at yourself. And it's a game changer because nobody wants to be a victim, right? Take ownership of your life, the good, the bad, all of it. Just own it. Step into your story. It's part of who you are right now. So these are the kinds of conversations I have with myself and with my clients, and I hope it impacted you or you got some small golden nugget from it. Talk to you soon.